Bright. No, calm down.
I didn't say you don't like Bright.
I'm just entertaining him. I just want to know how you came up to that conclusion.
Okay, because of how lonely this place gets, your brain does this thing where you shrink. Yeah. It forces you to pick something. The consequence is you either pick or you're alone. Based on what I've seen here, I don't see it going far.
This was the conversation that was had early this morning. But the question now is, what Faith said, is it sense or nonsense?
You guys will look picture perfect together. You probably do a few movies together, maybe go a few shows together and stuff. One day, you guys wake up and realize, it's not it.
But that's also your
Hey, that's my opinion.
Let me tell you a story. There was a young man who found himself inside the Big Brother's house, and he ended up being one of the most intelligent housemates that the Big Brother Naija season ever experienced. His name is Faith. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Lucy's Quick One, talking the Big Brother Naija show season 10. 10 over 10, no zero, no minus. 10 over love, 10 over drama, 10 over smartness, 10 over basketballs and everything in between. Ladies and gentlemen, a conversation was had. Tables were shattered. You thought you had seen the one from the eviction show. In fact, there was part 2 of this table being shattered. And the person that caused the shattering of this table is one person. His name is Faith. Now guys, there were 2 major conversations had early this morning. One between Faith and some of the housemates. The second between Sultana and Jason Jae. And I would like to take them one after the other. First with Faith. So first of all, they had the head of house games, and congratulations to Faith, he became the head of house. And because he's mandated to pick a house guest, he had to pick Mensan as his house guest. So they were having a conversation at the dining, and they were talking about the fact that Ebuka had mentioned a lot of things from the eviction show about relationships not being real, about people using people and all of that. And even for himself, he found himself in a very dicey situation with Joanna and Jason Jae being in the mix. So he kept on explaining to the housemate that I wouldn't be hurt about anything that would have happened, that he had even foreseen Jason Jae and Joanna having a thing together, because he had seen the patterns to which they had been moving, from dancing to how they have some flirtatious talks and all of those things. So it was explained to the housemate that in as much as all these things are happening, they are living in a facade. Things are not really real. Things are on surface level, and that's because everybody is playing a game. So you can't really judge who is real, who is loyal to you, who is your friend, until you are out of the house, and then the patterns will now determine whether or not this person is in your corner. So before we knew what was happening, right, he moves to Bright Morgan and Mide, and he was like, Mide, you don't really like this guy, you just entertain the guy. And everybody was like, what? Even Mide was like, I do not understand. He said, let me tell you something. So you see the house, it's like a cocoon, it's like a box where we are all inside. And because we do not really have options, you begin to desire what you can actually see. So all Faith was trying to explain is, when the desirable becomes unavailable, the available becomes desirable. So it's not like you are head over heels this guy. You were just entertaining him because that is the only option that you could connect with. The moment you are able to be free and you are outside the house and you have limitless options, you'll be able to see clearer that this guy is not really the kind of person that you probably might want to be with. As this guy was explaining this whole situation, people were just looking at Faith. I don't understand. So, in her own defense, Mide was like, no, I do not think that you're right. I believe that that's your point of view. I know that there have been housemates that have met each other on the show and then they went on to being together. We've had Shegs and Bella, we've had Bam Bam and Teddy, we've had a host of them, right? So she was like, it doesn't mean that my own might be different. My own might not just be different. I might still end up with Bright. And when she was explaining that, I had to quickly remember what Bright said on the stage, where it was like, I was living in my reality then, now I am about to live in my reality now. And I know that one of his realities will be the fact that he had something to do with Mide while being in the house, and that probably kept him in the house for the longest. So Faith came back to say, I understand what you're saying and I might be wrong, but quote me, in the next 2 years I'll be back to this conversation. I will go and gauge and see whether or not you and Brad Morgan are still an item. People were like, oh, this guy don't give us timeline, don't give us deadline. He has given us a time frame to see whether or not this relationship will last or not. And Mide was just there while she was really trying her best to argue and understand what Faith was saying. It felt like Faith was saying a lot of sense. And I usually say, I know that there is nothing that is predictable, but when it comes to the house, because you are seeing this person in your face every single time. No matter how strong you want to stand, right? At some point, you're probably going to bulge because you're lonely, because that's what you have available in front of you and things like that. So let's all wait and see. God, it was the expression and the tension for me while Faith was talking. Let's all wait and see how Morgan and Mide will pan out in the next 2 years, as Faith said. Like I always like to say, when it comes to Big Brother Naija show, it's not a love game. It's not a love show. It's a game of intellect, of wit, of strength, of intelligence. So a lot of things actually determine the winner at the end of the day. So let's just see how they will actually pan out. So while Mide was still shouting and saying, hey, which kind of talk is this? Faith moves from Mide to Dede and Kola.
So coming to this place is like, oh, I want
Kola
my...
sits. When you said buttressing my point,
Yeah.
it's not going anywhere.
Let's be real. I don't hate the outside world. 2 months of talking to someone is nothing.
Now, Kola was seated on the dining while he was having this conversation. It was like, see, talking about Dede and Kola, they will also not amount to anything. In fact, everything that is happening is just in the house. And then Dede was like, for sure, before I go, I do not understand. And he was like, see, let me tell you why it will not work out. Because Mensa and Zita were also on the table. And they were asking, they were like, how do you know this one again? And he was like, first off, Dede is selfish. And Dede was like, okay, yeah, I know. And then Kola is a lover boy. Kola wants attention. Kola wants care. And that's something that Dede will not give him. So at the end of the day, he's not going to stay there forever. He will move on to somebody who is giving him what exactly he wants. And Dede was like, I know. And then, so Faith was trying to break it down and explain. But for some very interesting reason, the conversation was not going down well with Kola. So he had to stand up. And they were like, Kola, you have to hear this. But Kola was like, no, he's not going to sit. And that's because Dede was about to explain the reason she cannot even really have anything to do with Kola. And it made Kola very uncomfortable. And he left. And in my mind, I was like, Kola, you can stand up and leave when you're talking about you, but you were listening to that of Mide and Bright Morgan, and you were listening to that of Joanna and Faith. Like, really? You can't take it? So at the end of the day, right, Dede just kept on explaining the reasons she can't be with Kola, the reason she has to protect herself, the reason she can't really feel anything is real on the house because of the fact that it's a game. And it's very interesting to see that people actually forget that it's a game. That was her argument. And then she was arguing, saying that I do not want to have anything to do with anybody in this house. I've said it from the beginning of the show. I do not want a sheep. And then Zita was like, no, I have to stop you here because I also said I was never going to have anything to do with any Big Brother Naija boy. But look at me now, I fell for Dambo's kid. And people were like, yours is actually different. So they went back and they circled back to Faith, talking about Joanna. And he said, Joanna is a phenomenal woman. She likes what she likes and he likes what he likes. He doesn't even want to get married. And they were like, He said he doesn't want to get married. And he mentioned the fact that I think his grandfather had 12 wives, or his father. I think he said his grandfather had 12 wives. And because he just did not want to have one woman. And for him, he just believes that he's just going to be open with anybody, but he's not going to have a relationship that would lead to marriage. People were like, who is this guy called Faith? And Mensa was just there looking. They also talked about, Rude Boy was also there. They also talked about the fact that the house has been divided into 2.
So the team is Team A, Thelma, Mide, Dede, and Joanna, no, and Bright Morgan.
And then they had to break it down and say the leaders of the 2 groups are Thelma Lawson on one hand, Isabella on the other hand. And whoever mixes with one person automatically signs his self to that party. Now we move away from that conversation. I would like to know what you think about that in the comment section. We move over to this whole situation of Jason Jae and Sultana. And I was extremely confused at what they were saying.
But if it makes you feel better that yes, you told me that you don't want to box yourself, that is the reason. I hear you. But my point still remains that if you started finding someone attractive, you should have told me that we're not in a relationship. Yes, but I will take myself far away from it. I have self-respect.
I was like, for my self-respect, you should have told me, because I've been making a lot of noise about the closeness of you and Joanna, and you always made me feel like it was nothing, and I had to like respect you and believe you and trust you for it. Now Ebuka is coming to tell me that you guys are doing things and made me look like a fool on national TV. And it was very funny to hear her say that because, you know, at some point there was a closeness between Dede and Jason Jae, which she was also kind of not comfortable with, and at the end of the day she had peace the moment Jason Jae and Dede fell apart. Now there is a Joanna in the mix, and you are talking about the fact that okay, there should have been a conversation that would have been had. So Jason Jae was like, I still do not see the problem here. I do not see the fact that I have done anything wrong. These were my preferences and I thought you knew about it. And they just kept on arguing for the longest. They had the smoke and everything. I knew that the moment Ebuka brought the whole Jason Jae and Joanna situation into the mix, right, it would have it will turn into a full-blown problem. The thing, or the good thing here is Joanna is already out of the game, so probably Sultana will not be seeing a lot of Joanna, and probably there will be peace for the next 2 weeks. But the reality here is Jason Jae is playing his game the way he's playing his game, and it does not sit well with Sultana. So I think the best thing now is probably for Sultana to give herself that self-respect that she's talking about and leave Jason Jae alone. But is it possible though? Will Jason Jae even leave her alone? I do not think so, because like Faith said, limited option. You're going to be going with what you actually see right in front of you. So those were the conversations that we had that I wanted to bring to the fore for you to understand the things that were said early this morning. The house is getting very interesting, and I guess we'll see how this whole game ends at the end of the day. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section. I got you more right here on this channel. Till next time, remember to enjoy every moment.